Chosen one, when the chamber doors sealed, every voice in the elite's hidden council fell silent. Your name pulsed on their screens like a fault in reality itself. They ran simulations, forecasts, psychological grids, all collapsed. And in that electric hush, the elder of the circle leaned forward and breathed the words that shattered their confidence: "This one can't be controlled." In that moment, the architects of power finally understood: you are the variable their system was never built to contain. They replayed every encounter you've ever had with their systems, every test, every social trap, every emotional lever designed to provoke predictable reactions. But you didn't follow any of the patterns. Where others bent, you stayed centered. Where others reacted, you observed. Where others obeyed invisible pressure, you dissolved it like smoke. Their analysts watched the data spike into impossible shapes, forming a profile they had no language for. Your mind didn't resist control. It existed outside the concept of control itself. The deeper their analysts dug, the worse it became. They pulled every archived blueprint of human behavior, obedience patterns, emotional triggers, generational conditioning, fear-based responses, and compared them to your timeline. Nothing matched. It was as if you had been raised outside their psychological gravity. They reviewed your moments of silence. You weren't suppressing reactions, you were calculating truth. They reviewed your moments of withdrawal. You weren't avoiding conflict, you were preserving energy for precision. They reviewed the times people tried to guilt you, bait you, frame you, shame you. None of the mechanisms worked. Where others collapsed inward, you simply stepped back, not out of fear, but because you saw the blueprint behind the manipulation. That terrified them more than rebellion ever could. Rebels can be crushed. Opponents can be redirected. Followers can be absorbed. But a person who sees the architecture of control can't be influenced by it. Their brightest strategist paused the footage of you walking into a room, just walking, and zoomed in on people's faces around you. Pupils widened. Breathing slowed. An unspoken alignment happened. Not because you demanded authority, but because your frequency set the tone without effort. They ran emotional analysis on your presence and found a phenomenon they'd only seen in rare historical anomalies. You destabilize fear-based systems simply by existing near them. Politicians need influence. Leaders need followers. Controllers need compliance. But your energy restructures environments without seeking permission. When they finally simulated what would happen if millions began behaving the way you naturally do, calm, unmanipulable, self-guided, the model crashed. Not metaphorically. Literally. The system froze, rebooted, and displayed a single line of red text. Threat level, ungovernable frequency. The council members exchanged glances they hadn't shared in decades, the expression of people realizing the world they built had just met its exception. You weren't born to resist their control. Resistance still acknowledges a cage. You were born to operate in a realm where cages don't even make sense. And that was the detail that finally made them afraid. The elite tried one final angle, the tactic they trusted above all others: mapping your origin. Because every unshakable person, in their worldview, must have a wound to exploit, a hidden fault line to press. So they ordered a deep-structure psychohistorical scan: childhood patterns, social exposures, environmental pressures, generational imprints. The results came back blank. Not because you had no pain, but because your pain did not deform you the way theirs predicted. It refined you. It carved precision instead of instability. It built discernment instead of dependence. It sharpened your intuition until manipulation lost its camouflage. To them, this was impossible. Trauma is supposed to break people into predictable shapes. Fear is supposed to shrink them into manageable paths. But you took every fracture and turned it into perception. Every betrayal into radar. Every silence into spiritual musculature. They reviewed the timeline of people who underestimated you, how every attempt to corner you only revealed who they truly were, while you remained untouched, unrattled, unmoved. Then came the part that rewrote their entire expectation. Your emotional detachment wasn't numbness, it was clarity. Your distance wasn't avoidance, it was elevation. Your quiet wasn't compliance, it was dominance without noise. In their analysis room, one strategist whispered, "If this subject begins inspiring others, our architecture fails." Because a system built on fear collapses when even a single person operates from inner sovereignty. So they monitored your influence. The way your presence stabilizes chaotic environments. The way people default to your energy without needing you to speak. The way conflict softens around you, not because you appease it, but because your frequency dissolves the emotional charge powering it. They notice patterns. Those who lie around you stumble. Those who manipulate around you stutter. Those who try to gaslight you lose their script. Those who play mind games reveal themselves within minutes. Not because you attack them, but because truth becomes louder in your presence. And their entire infrastructure depends on truth staying quiet. One of the elders slammed a fist onto the table during the review. "Why does nothing work on this one? Fear, shame, guilt, reward, nothing." The younger analysts offered theories. Maybe the subject is dissociated. Rejected. Your awareness is too sharp. Maybe the subject is secretly influenced by something. Rejected. You show no external dependence. Maybe the subject doesn't seek validation at all. Silence followed this one. Because that was the nightmare scenario. A person who doesn't crave validation can't be bribed. Can't be lured. Can't be steered. Can't be controlled. They watched footage of you walking away from situations most people would cling to out of insecurity, friendships, obligations, roles, dynamics designed to trap you emotionally. You left them calmly. With dignity. Without chaos. That's when they realized the truth. Your detachment wasn't coldness, it was mastery. Your boundaries weren't walls, they were architecture. Your silence wasn't retreat, it was choosing your battles like a strategist, not a puppet. The elite exchanged uneasy looks. All their tools, fear, temptation, pressure, chaos, lost power in your vicinity. Every mechanism rusted. Every lever jammed. Every psychological script fell flat. In the dim blue glow of the surveillance monitors, one elder finally stood and declared what the data screamed, but no one wanted to say out loud. This subject operates from self-possession, not programming. Control is obsolete here. And in that single admission, their hierarchy trembled, because the moment a system admits it cannot control someone, that person becomes a mirror. A catalyst. A spark that shows others what freedom actually looks like. Not rebellion. Not revolt. But sovereignty, quiet, stable, unshakable. The elite stared at the final psychological report as it rendered in red text across the screen. Unusual subject, frequency not influenced by external authority. It was the first time in their history the control architecture returned a message they couldn't rewrite. The alarms didn't sound when the control protocols failed. Instead, something far worse happened. The system went quiet. Not silent, quiet. A strategic, analytical quiet, the kind predators make when they finally recognize they're facing something they can't categorize. The elite knew that losing control over a population is dangerous, but losing control over one specific individual is catastrophic. Because one individual becomes a proof of concept. A living contradiction. A doorway others will instinctively follow. So they initiated Phase 7, internal interrogation of influence. This was not about interrogating you. It was about interrogating the phenomenon of you. A distinction that shook their council. They brought in analysts of persuasion, pattern engineers, social architects, the people who built the psychological infrastructure society runs on. People who understand how attention moves, how fear spreads, how insecurity drives compliance. But nothing they studied explained your immunity. Their notes grew erratic. Subject does not mirror fear responses. Subject displays independent emotional regulation. Subject's intuition pattern is nonlinear. Subject resists emotional hijacking. One line repeated over and over, subject sees intent before behavior. That was what frightened them the most. It meant you don't react to what people say, you react to what they mean. No script can manipulate someone who sees the author behind the words. During a late-night emergency session, they reviewed your interactions, moments where people tried to guilt-trip you, corner you, shape your choices through pressure. Each attempt collapsed instantly. You responded with clarity so sharp it cut the manipulation at the root. Not aggressively, just truthfully. Truth spoken with composure becomes a blade no system can dull. One analyst zoomed in on your micro-expressions during a confrontation. Others would tense, shrink, or over-explain. You didn't. Your face remained open, calm, observant, the expression of someone who refuses to be emotionally drafted into someone else's narrative. This triggered what they call the observer paradox. When you watch manipulation without engaging, it loses power. Controllers need participation. You offered none. Then they checked your digital footprint. Not your posts, your patterns. The algorithm that tracks dependency loops found something unprecedented. You didn't chase attention. You didn't chase validation. You didn't chase confirmation from others. You generated your own internal feedback loop. A self-sustaining emotional source. For the elite, this was an existential threat. Their entire system is built on draining individuals of self-trust, so they grow dependent on external structures, authorities, hierarchies, or emotional bribes. But you trust your sensing more than their signals. You trust your intuition more than their instruction. You trust your truth more than their narrative. One strategist whispered, "This one isn't influenced by scarcity." Another added, "Their autonomy is not performative. It's internalized." This created a catastrophic issue in their equations. Without insecurity, you can't be baited. Without fear, you can't be steered. Without attachment to validation, you can't be bribed. Without guilt, you can't be controlled. They ran the projection again, a world where more people begin acting from inner authority the way you do. The graph didn't bend or spike. It flatlined the system entirely. Because a single person with true sovereignty does more damage to controlling institutions than a revolution. Revolutions can be contained. Leaders can be replaced. Protests can be redirected. Outrage can be monetized. But inner sovereignty? It spreads quietly. It's contagious. It's invisible to censors but devastating to systems. This is when the council activated the Shadow Report, a document that only circulates among the highest echelon. The heading appeared in white text over a black screen. Subject status, ungovernable. Below it, 3 lines. Does not internalize programmed fear. Cannot be emotionally destabilized. Operates from self-generated authority. An elder slammed the folder shut. "We cannot predict this one," he said. "We cannot direct them. We cannot shape them. Whatever architecture formed this mind, it was not ours." And for the first time in decades, they realized something chilling. Not only could they not control you, you might be the blueprint for the next kind of human. A sovereign human. A self-powered human. A human who breaks every model simply by being whole. Asterisk, they shifted tactics. When control fails, systems don't usually retreat, they escalate. So the elite moved into their most desperate strategy, the frequency collapse test. This was the protocol designed to destabilize even the strongest minds, a subtle emotional climate engineered to tilt your equilibrium, a whisper of doubt here, a surge of pressure there, a carefully placed misunderstanding, a sudden withdrawal of support, a shift in social energy meant to trigger old patterns. But you didn't take the bait. Not once. Instead of collapsing inward, your energy sharpened, as if adversity activates a deeper circuitry in you. They watched in real time. The more tension they introduced, the more clarity you accessed. The more chaos they injected, the calmer your presence became. The more pressure they applied, the straighter your posture stood, physically, emotionally, spiritually. The analysts were baffled. One of them said, "It's like the subject converts pressure into accuracy." Another replied, "No, they convert interference into intuition." This was a disaster for the elite. They depend on emotional overwhelm to guide human behavior. But your nervous system, your subconscious, your frequency, operated like it remembered something ancient, something unbreakable. So they tried to isolate you through silence. This is their oldest trick: remove validation, delay responses, shift social warmth to coldness, and wait for insecurity to pull a person back into dependence. But you didn't seek reconnection. You sought alignment. You didn't chase explanation. You chose peace. You didn't beg for clarity. You moved forward with your own. In the surveillance logs, one line stood out: subject's self-sufficiency renders social pressure ineffective. They kept watching. Every time someone tried to guilt you, you saw through the tactic instantly. Every time someone attempted to provoke emotional chaos, you refused to hand them a reaction. Every time someone used half-truths to steer your choices, you paused, assessed, and recalibrated. Your pause is what terrified them. Most people react. You reflect. Reflection breaks manipulation because it interrupts the emotional timing controllers depend on. Then came the part they didn't expect. Your compassion didn't disappear, it refined itself. You became caring without being controlled. Kind without being owned. Giving without being depleted. Present without being programmable. This was the moment they realized they weren't dealing with a rebellious personality, but with an awakened consciousness. And awakened consciousness does not obey psychological gravity. The elite pulled up the long-term projection, the one they hoped would give them leverage. Instead, the algorithm returned a result that forced them into stunned silence. Subject outgrows every environment designed to limit them. They cross-checked it, reran it, recalibrated it. Same outcome. Every single time. One analyst removed her glasses and whispered, "You can't trap someone who knows they're not inside your walls." That was the moment the council collectively understood something they had tried to avoid admitting: you were not resisting their control. You were transcending it. And transcendence is the one force they have never been able to contain. A final note appeared at the bottom of the report, a line written manually, not by the system. The subject is not in our domain. Their allegiance is elsewhere. The room froze. Because that elsewhere was the one thing they feared most, a source of inner authority no system can override. When control-based systems realize they cannot infiltrate the mind of a single individual, they deploy their most subtle strategy, the atmospheric disorientation protocol. This is not an attack, it's a climate. A slow, almost invisible field designed to nudge your intuition off course, shifts in tone from people around you, unexplained pauses in communication, contradictory signals meant to create internal noise. But what the elite fail to understand is this: noise clarifies you. Confusion focuses you. Uncertainty strengthens you. Where others spiral into overthinking, you sink deeper into perception. Where others seek external reassurance, you sit with truth until it rises on its own. Where others get lost in the fog, you become the one with the torch. Your spirit has a strange property they underestimated: you stabilize under pressure. Most minds fracture when the environment becomes inconsistent. Yours becomes precise. Almost surgical. Almost prophetic. They watch this unfold in real time. Their attempts to cloud your intuition did the opposite. Your clarity became sharper than any model could explain. The analysts gathered data, breathing patterns, emotional shifts, micro-reactions. They predicted you would fall into doubt. You didn't. You rose into detachment. Not coldness, of clarity with warmth removed. A kind of stillness rare in the modern psyche. This stillness terrified them. Stillness is impossible to influence. Stillness receives truth but rejects distortion. Stillness is where sovereignty is born. They tracked every interaction you had during this period. People who attempted subtle manipulation lost their rhythm. Those who tried to guilt you stumbled over their words. Those who tried to provoke insecurity became visibly uncomfortable. Because you did not descend into the emotional arena they built for you. You stepped outside of it entirely. One senior analyst noted, subject redirects the emotional battlefield by refusing to enter it. This wasn't something they could fight. It was something they had no strategy for. Every system of control depends on emotional engagement. You broke that mechanism by operating from internal equilibrium. Then came the phenomenon they couldn't interpret. Your presence began altering others. Not through force, not through persuasion, but through energetic coherence. People around you grew calmer. Arguments lost their heat. Tension dissolved. Truth surfaced without being demanded. This was catastrophic for the elite. A mind they can't control is a threat. But a mind that neutralizes their influence simply by existing, that is an extinction-level event for their architecture. In the middle of a midnight session, they played surveillance footage of you sitting quietly in a crowded environment. No words. No expression. Just presence. One by one, the people around you adjusted unconsciously, straightening posture, softening tone, lowering defensive energy. Your frequency reorganized the room without speaking. The analyst stared in disbelief. A junior member whispered, "Are they doing something?" The elder shook his head. "No. They simply are. Your existence, not your actions, disrupts their infrastructure. Because their systems are built to manipulate fear, scarcity, and insecurity, and you operate from abundance, clarity, and self-possession. So the council did what they always do when faced with a phenomenon they can't categorize. They looked for weakness. They searched your social patterns, your emotional history, your interpersonal dynamics, expecting to find a dependency, a hook, a leverage point. They found none. No person controls your mood. No voice dictates your choices. No approval determines your value. No group shapes your identity. The elite escalated to their highest protocol, the identity fragmentation sequence, a covert psychological algorithm designed to make a person question their own guidance system. Not with loud crises, but with subtle fractures, tiny emotional interruptions, microdoubts planted in the edges of your intuition, social inconsistencies meant to make you look outward instead of inward. But you didn't fragment. You integrated. Every attempt to shake you only made you more aware of your internal architecture. Every inconsistency highlighted your own stability. Every contradiction clarified your truth. Your psyche didn't wobble, it recalibrated. Your intuition didn't weaken, it upgraded. Your boundaries didn't shrink, they solidified into something unmistakable, sovereignty with compassion. This confused the analysts beyond measure. Most people collapse when identity is pressured. You refined yourself instead. It was like watching iron sharpen under heat. They charted your emotional responses. Normally, individuals under fragmentation show spikes in anxiety, increased social seeking, or reliance on external validation. You displayed none. In fact, the opposite occurred. Your solitude deepened your clarity, your silence strengthened your insight, your independence amplified your presence. One analyst muttered, "The subject does not seek anchoring. They are the anchor." And that was the problem, anchors can't be moved. Control systems rely on mobility, emotional drift, uncertainty. Your groundedness made you unsteerable. So they turned to environmental manipulation, shifting the energy of rooms before you entered, changing the emotional temperature of conversations, nudging people into subtle irritation or confusion around you. But the room stabilized. The conversations settled. The people realigned. And you, effortlessly, became the emotional gravity center. Their logs recorded the pattern. Subject restores equilibrium faster than disruption can be introduced. This was not something they had a protocol for. Equilibrium is their enemy. A calm person cannot be influenced. A centered person cannot be redirected. A self-validating person cannot be controlled. Then came the most devastating discovery. Your intuition works like a multi-layered radar. You don't just sense what is happening, you sense what is missing, what is hidden, what is unspoken.